And good morning. Yeah, sorry, it's been a few weeks. I've been really ill for a month or so. I had a really bad infection that took me a few weeks to get over. Then I ended up getting gout in both knees, and that caused its own problem. So it's been a rough month or so, but um, glad I'm back. Um, Last week I interviewed the um, compensation team from the NDIA for people who are seeking compensation for personal injury. Um, there's a few things that myself and my support worker come across on the NDIA website regarding people receiving compensation and having to reimburse the NDIA for supports that they've had in the past and future. I was a bit surprised when we read through the overview. It said that the NDIA has the power to take over someone's litigation, whether they want them to or not. If they're not happy with the way it's going, or they're not going to get enough money for supports, which I sort of didn't really agree with, but I understand that some people may not have the capacity to do so. It was a really good interview. It was fantastic. The people I spoke to, Christian and Kim, they were very open and straightforward, easy to talk to, and they gave some really great information. And I'm just waiting to receive a copy of that interview. And when I do, I'll post it up to the channel. Um, Basically, what can happen if somebody sues for personal injury. Uh, for example, someone has an accident through negligence, and they end up a quadriplegic or paraplegic. Um, they can get on the NDIS virtually straight away after their accident. And once they take compensation action, they can sue on a couple of things. One's supports, lifetime supports for their needs, resulting from the injury. The other one is the loss of income. You know, because they can't work anymore, they can't earn, so they can sue for loss of income and for the pain and suffering that they go through as well. So, what the NDIA do is when there's a compensation claim being made, they might be maybe on the NDIS for 2 years or up to 5 years before they get a compensation payout. So the NDIA can recover all the money for all the supports they've had from the time they go on the NDIA on the NDIS until they get paid out to recover their costs for providing supports in that in that period, and they can also claim future supports. So any money that a person sues for and supports will be the NDIA will be coming after their fair share, which I do agree with. That's what people are being paid that money for, is for supports. The NDIS provide those supports, and they, in my opinion, they have the right to claim back those costs. During the interview, I asked how many people on the NDIS are going through compensation, and they estimate between 4 and 6% of NDIS participants, and also that they've never taken over someone's court case or forced somebody to sue for supports after an accident. That's never arisen, but that that part of the legislation is still there. Yeah, as a person, who believes that we all have our own rights. I sort of don't agree with it, but I can understand the NDIA's position on it. I sort of don't agree with it, but like I said, they have that right. And all this was discussed during the interview. And when I first approached the compensation team at the NDIA, I asked them to come onto a live stream. They said no, because people could ask questions, and that being a personal issue, confidentiality and privacy, that they didn't want to do it. But that I could do an interview, they could record it, and I could get a copy, which I agreed to. I don't know why they wouldn't come on the stream. They could, if somebody asked a question in the chat or come up on the panel to ask a question or ask few questions, they could say, we can't answer that because of privacy reasons. You have to contact us through the NDIS call centre, or through their direct phone number. I could have done that. I really don't know why they couldn't come on the live stream. I thought it was a bit strict. They were claiming copyright over the recording. I can only have it up on my YouTube channel for 12 months, and I have to take it down because there are constant reviews and changes to the NDIS. But they were, even though they were quite open and easy to talk to, I thought they were very controlling, saying that they have the copyright and all the rest of it and wouldn't come up in the live stream. I thought it was a bit restrictive. But anyway, once I get a copy of that recording, I will put it up on the channel and we'll go through it together and we'll take it apart and talk about each issue. So if anybody wants to come up and be a part of that, they're welcome to. I will send out an email letting know people that I've got the recording, and I'll be putting it up on a certain date. So that was the whole thing lasted 2 hours. The recording's probably half an hour long. I spoke to them beforehand and after regarding some of the questions. I had questions that I had to send through to them, so they could answer those questions, but I couldn't ask questions during the interview. I could only clarify this on the statements they made. So instead of asking a question, I said, I just need to clarify this. Then I would ask the question that I wanted to ask and get the answer for. But I will let everyone know that when I get it and when I'm going to put it up, and I invite anyone who wants to come up and talk about it or who's going through the conversation process. It would be good to get your point of view across and see what you think about that interview and their statements. So have a think about it. Also, I want to talk today about, I've raised this issue before about people over 65 being excluded from the NDIS, which I personally don't agree with. You can end up with a disability at any time through the stages of your life. Just because you're under 65 doesn't make you immune to acquiring a disability. It's just ridiculous, in my opinion. There's a man who applied for the NDIS, but because he was just over 65, he was declined. This man's had polio since he was 6 years old. And I'll just get Chris we'll roll that clip and we'll talk a bit more about it after we listen to that clip. You play that. Thanks, Chris.
Peter Freckleton caught polio when he was 6 years old.
I was paralysed totally. I finished up with both legs paralysed, and for the rest of my life I had to wear leg braces and use calipers and use a wheelchair.
When the National Disability Insurance Scheme was rolled out 10 years ago, he was rejected because he was over the age of 65, leaving him ineligible for home modifications and new leg braces.
They didn't query my disability. It was just straight out no. because of the age requirement, and it's so unfair.
Peters made a complaint to the United Nations, claiming that being excluded because of his age is a breach of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities.
What Peter wants is for the NDIS Act to change, to remove the age cap, to remove the age discrimination.
If you're over 65, you're not given that opportunity.
Spinal Life Australia supports Peters' complaint. They say aged care funding is leaving people short.
Whereas NDIS, there's hundreds of thousands of dollars available for care all the time, up to 24 hours if you need it.
The government will have to respond to the UN complaint in writing.
The UN committee will provide a written decision about whether the Australian government has discriminated against Peter and whether the Australian government has breached Peter's human rights under the convention.
People are welcome, though, to test what they think's the law, and we'll just see where that case goes.
A government spokesperson says it's designing a new home support program for older Australians with disability who aren't eligible for the NDIS starting in 2025. Naz Campanella, ABC News.
Well, there you go. Is that fair? He's had a disability all of his life, but because he's just over 65 at the time, he wasn't eligible. Now, you've got to remember that the people who are on it now got it for the rest of their lives. Younger people don't know what it's like for older people to have a disability. Yeah, it takes longer to recover. With age, you lose mobility and you lose eyesight, hearing, balance. There's a whole range of issues, but add on top of that a disability, and it's a lot harder. And it's just so unfair that people over 65 aren't eligible. You know, they have just as much right to access those supports as people under 65. Just because you're 20, 30 years old, even 40 years old. And because it won't affect you, you just shrug your shoulders, and not everyone, but some people just shrug their shoulders. Oh, well, this doesn't affect me. I don't support it. It's unfair. And I hope the UN finds in favour of this gentleman. And, I've got to say, in Bill Shorten's response to that, any person can take any action if they don't think the legislation's, great comeback there, Bill. Very well said, well thought out, well researched, and very compassionate. Good on you. But let me know what you think. I've asked this question on this YouTube channel, and I've asked it on Facebook. Some people are for, some people are against. Some people say that just because you're old, and with the age of 65, that doesn't mean it's a disability. Well, I beg to differ. What's a disability? It's an impairment, a permanent or long-time impairment. So people who lose mobility, who can't get out of their house without support because of their age. I'm not talking about people in their 90s or their 80s. I'm talking about people who are just over 65, 75. They were still active in their mind, but just can't get out because of mobility issues or because their sight's deteriorated. It's just not fair. I've known people because of their age, they rarely leave their house. There's a lady just down the road from where I live. She hadn't left the home in 2 years, and she bought a mobility scooter. Now she's out and about and goes downtown a couple of times a week. If she couldn't afford that mobility scooter herself and needed the support from the NDIS, would you hold that against her because she's over 65? No, I wouldn't. We talk about people over 65. What about people who are already in the system? I've seen so many people fudging the line. Not fudging the line, just stepping over the line. Instead of paying for something, they increase the hours to cover the costs, or contractors double their price because it's the NDIS, or they put a disabled sticker on it and put it up 20% because people with disabilities can use it. Therefore, they can raise the prices. The NDIS have been rorted like that. People overpricing their products deliberately because it's for people with disabilities. There's a whole range of issues with that, and I would just ask everyone to stop and think about, if we didn't have the NDIS and you're over the age of 65 and you had your disability your whole life, then they brought it in and you wasn't eligible, would you think it's fair? No, I certainly wouldn't. Now, I ended up with disabilities in 1989, and I basically sat at home from 1989 until I got the NDIS funding. So that's right, Chris. Joe's here. People have their own, entitled to their own views and opinions, and I'm not saying you're a bad person because you have different views and opinions, but don't be so critical at times either. It makes it harder when people who are trying to fight for the basic things that they need, and other people are criticising them. It just makes that little bit, that much harder. I've been through it myself. So, all right, is anyone in chat? No. Yeah. All right, we might end it there, and as soon as I get the recorded interview with the NDIA compensation team, I'll put it up on my channel and we can all view it together and talk about it. Might end it there. Thanks, Chris.